and today we'll be speaking to Duncan Park, who's the Associate Director of Assessment at MANCOSA. MANCOSA is a registered and accredited private higher education institution, and they are a member of the Honoris United Universities. Today we'll be speaking about artificial intelligence and the impact it has on education, and specifically higher education institutions.
I think a lot of it is to do with how can we use it in our daily activities. How can we make use of it to make our lives, I wouldn't say easier, but to enable us to do things more efficiently. So how can these tools be used positively within education? And how can students and teachers use it to make their lives, much easier?
So the potential opportunities and benefits of AI are quite significant. I think that, it's early days. Right now, a lot of people are still quite fearful of the technology.
Yes.
It's new, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. And the full scope of how it's changing the sector and, and the full scope of its impact is still an unknown to us, But we have seen already significant changes that it has made. And I think that in terms of, benefits for the education sector, I think probably the biggest benefit that people are most excited about is this prospect of personalized learning opportunities. So with generative AI and even just, AI analysis and that and those sorts of technologies, there's a whole new world of, adaptive learning and smart content where AI can analyze student performance, it can analyze all of the student data and create individualized learning pathways. It can create very, very specific learning structures for people that have very specific learning needs. Because with this democratization of knowledge, people know that the knowledge is available to them, and students are now more discerning than ever before. They come to you as an institution with very specific expectations and with a set of tools to kind of cross-check, they can see what they're being taught, but they have all the knowledge in the world available that they can check this against. So students are a lot more discerning about what they want. They need education for very specific individual needs. Maybe it's for their career, maybe it's because they want to start a particular type of business, and they might need, a blend of skills that isn't necessarily offered on one qualification. And so I think AI will allow for that kind of flexibility in learning.
Yes.
And I think that, more benefits that I'll just quickly run through. I'll try not to ramble. Things like intelligent tutoring systems, where students, and you can already do this. If you want to learn about a topic, you can go into ChatGPT and ask it questions. And then based on the prompts it gives, you may have more questions, and it can give you the sort of very, very specific kind of personalized tuition that you want. And that's really the guide on the side, But then there's also things like, automated grading and feedback, just data analytics, predictive modeling. You can predict where students are going to have challenges, where they aren't. Things like language translation and accessibility to education, and then just things as basic as administrative efficiency. So those are all areas where we see potential for AI to add a lot of benefit.
So I would say that it definitely is a game changer when it comes to access to education, and having that, I feel like it's a feel of independence where I can just use these tools and expand my knowledge independently. At the same time, we can't ignore the fact that there are a lot of flaws when it comes to these tools. And I think it's important that it's something that's flagged, highlighted to students to have their blinkers on. You can't just use chat. I'm pretty sure there's concerns about ethical standards as well when it comes to doing assignments and using ChatGPT or other tools. How are their way? Have you guys spoken about regulating these type of methods? how will we be telling children, okay, learners, okay, it's okay, we can be using these tools, but also there are limits, because I know, like, you can't just submit a full assignment. I can basically put into ChatGPT or write me a whole essay, and they'll basically just give it to me, and I can submit it as an assignment. But obviously, that's not how we'd want students to be using it. So maybe you guys have not spoken about it yet, or haven't done research, but like ways to regulate these flows. Can you just
So yeah,
speak
no.
about that?
So I think that this is really where the conversation started in the education sector with AI. Was, whenever there's a new technology or a new idea or anything like that, I think the first thing that people see is a threat or a risk.
Yes.
And I think that, the challenges and risks associated with AI are very real. I don't want to sort of undermine that.
Yes.
We've spoken a lot about benefits, but there are
Yeah.
indeed, significant challenges and risks associated with it. But to be honest with you, when it comes to generative AI specifically, so that's, tools like ChatGPT that
Yes.
you can give it prompts and it will give you what you're looking for, kind of thing, give you that information or solve those problems for you. That kind of a technology is really a tool that isn't going
Yes.
away. I think that that's the first most important thing for us to acknowledge, because on the one hand, there's really two ways of addressing the risk that AI poses, or generative AI poses. The one is, and quite a few institutions, when it sort of first became this hot topic, had a very reactive, sort of knee-jerk way of responding to it, which was, we have to ban it. Students can't use it. They mustn't go near it. It's illegal. They can't be using it.
It's
but
a threat.
that is not that's not a sustainable or meaningful way of responding to this technology.
Exactly.
What it really requires is for us as leaders in education and as educational institutions to really reflect on our current practice. So I think that the fact that if a student can take an assignment question and put it in ChatGPT and it can generate a passing answer, then I think that we really need to reflect on the way that we are assessing students rather than trying to prevent students from using it. The fact of the matter is that in the workspace and in industry, this is going to be a tool that will be available to them. So I think it's really important that, institutions are equipping students with the kinds of skills to actually use these tools effectively. And I think that's really important, is that we guide students through using this. And earlier in the conversation, I referred to, critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
Because ChatGPT doesn't get it right all the time.
No,
it makes many mistakes. There's a lot of incorrect and flawed information out there. And students need to be able to recognize this. They need to understand the limitations of these tools. And so I think that, how we deal with these challenges is really, how are we going to adapt and change as educators and as institutions? Because, if we think of something, so for example, we were talking about this benefit of individualized learning pathways.
Yes.
Sounds amazing and is amazing. And, if we look at other sectors, like how do we watch TV now? We watch it on streaming services. We want what we want on demand immediately. Education is moving in that direction. Like I said, students are discerning. They have demands in their education now. But what then happens to things like standardized assessment? Assessment is built on the premise that all of us get the same assessment, and our grades are comparable to one another, and that's how we determine who got distinctions, who passed, who gets cum laude, who fails. If we're going to go an individualized direction, then this idea of standardized assessment becomes questionable. Is that still a valid way of measuring this? And then what's the implication of that on traditional qualifications? where
Yeah.
you'll have thousands of graduates. I've got a BCom in IT or whatever.
Yes.
That's entirely premised on all of those students having a standardized assessment at the end. This assessment is for you to demonstrate you've met the learning requirements for this qualification. But if students don't want a qualification necessarily and rather want, hey, I need this information and these skills, what happens? And I think that's the biggest challenge, because we don't have that answer yet. And that's what we need to be thinking about.
Thank you so much for watching. It was a really insightful chat. I hope you guys learned a lot. I know I did. And if you want to know more about MANCOSA, you can head to our website www.careersportal.co.za for any information you may need about what they offer and also any information about studying in your future career. Comment down below your thoughts on AI. Are you afraid of it? Are you embracing it? We want to know. Yeah, thanks for watching. Like this video and subscribe to our channel for more.